Some people are joining from inside timer, some are joining from YouTube, and someone also sitting here. So in this space and time, can everyone put aside everything on the mind? The mind is always occupied by various things: entanglement, attachment. The mind is busy with its occupation. When the mind is busy and occupied, it cannot observe, because the content of the thoughts, the content of the consciousness, is so dominating. Therefore, the mind cannot observe. Putting aside all the things means that can the mind walk out of all the content of thoughts now, to look, to observe, to perceive directly what is going on in the mind. Observing the whole movement of thoughts and being trapped in the content of thoughts are two wholly different matters. When the mind is able to observe the whole movement of thoughts, the content of it, the content of the thoughts stay in the right place, function normally, healthily, sanely. But without this total observation, there's only a trap. The mind is trapped in the content of thoughts. Therefore, thoughts go everywhere, creating oscillation, extremities, aggression. Therefore, thoughts don't stay in the right place. And thoughts inevitably become destructive. I hope everybody can see it directly. Because this is not some theories or ideas or views. It demands one to perceive it directly. Just like one can perceive the hunger. When one hasn't eaten food for a whole day, or one can feel the fatigue when one has exerted physical exercise. Similarly, one can perceive what is going on the mind without thinking about it. When the mind is trapped in the content of thoughts, as most people are on this planet, the mind is worshipping thoughts. Depending on thoughts. Therefore, the attachment is inevitably there. When the mind depends on thoughts, that is the entanglement with thoughts. And thoughts are indefinitely divisive. The mind keeps dividing in thoughts. Can one say this? Thoughts are in nature divisive. It keeps dividing, creating more fragments, more details. And when the mind is dependent on thoughts, when everybody is doing that, human beings become more and more divisive, fragmented. As it is going on, all the world. When the whole world is worshipping thoughts, which is the mind is trapped in the content of thoughts. So can one observe all those things directly? The mind depends on thoughts. And the thoughts are indefinitely divisive, creating numerous fragments. And that dependence, which is also the attachment, lead to numerous fragments. So this constant entanglement with thoughts, or constant indulge with thoughts, bring about such a world as it is. Everyone is worshipping thoughts. And everybody has placed such a great importance on thoughts. And when everybody is depending on thoughts, thoughts are divisive. Therefore, everybody is dependent on something different. Therefore, there's disconnection between people. Can one say this directly? When I depend on thoughts, thoughts forms the fragment. Therefore, I get trapped in a fragment. And you are trapped in different fragment. Therefore, we are disconnected. And those two fragments, even more, are in conflict. Therefore, we have different views, with different opinions. We disagree with each other. When we argue. Can one perceive this? Can one see that this pattern is repeated all the time across the world, across the whole life? So can the mind deal with this issue? Or deal with the fact? What is the meaning? What do I mean? Or what does speaker mean by dealing with the fact? What is the fact? Unfortunately, the word fact has been polluted, misused. We tend to associate fact with figures and all that, and narratives. But what is fact? Here we are dealing with the psychological facts. What are they? Obviously, facts are not thoughts. Those thoughts can be employed to reveal facts, but facts are not thoughts. Can one say this directly? Just like we are discussing now, we are using language, thoughts, to point to the facts, but thoughts are never the facts. Can one perceive it now? When the mind is holding onto thoughts, depending on thoughts, the mind cannot see the fact. Please see the fact here. Right? Thoughts are so important, and I depend on thoughts. I'm not concerned about facts, because facts are not thoughts. When I'm really deeply concerned about facts, I want to find out the facts. I must put aside the thoughts. I must let thoughts function in their right place. So can the mind see the fact? That's to put aside thoughts, so thoughts can stay in the right place. When the mind clings to thoughts, the mind is disconnected from facts, therefore is unable to see the fact. But when the mind sees the fact, there's an immediate change to the mind. Can I see this? This is not a theory concocted by the speaker. It's not a viewpoint, but something very factual. And one must perceive it directly. As we said, perceive it like perceive the hunger, perceive the fatigue. Also perceive the limitation of thoughts and its mischief and deception and cunningness or aggressiveness. But as long as the mind clings to thoughts, the content of thoughts becomes tremendously important. Therefore, the mind becomes lazy. It depends on the content of thoughts. It stops perceiving. Please see the fact as it is. Facts are precise, clear. But one must perceive it directly. Thoughts are incredibly deceptive, cunning. And when the whole world is worshipping thoughts, please see the actual situation. World becomes utterly cunning. The ego, the self, the me, is the content of thoughts, isn't it? And based on the content, the mind builds up a thinking structure about the me, the self, the ego. Therefore, it is full of cunningness, deception, of various absurd assertion. All those denies the truth, the fact. In thoughts, as we said, everything is cunning, deceptive. Therefore, that's the foundation of the hypocrisy. When the life is merely based on thoughts, there's only hypocrisy. And when the mind is seeing the facts and acting upon facts, it is free of any hypocrisy. Hypocrisy implies conflict, isn't it? What the thoughts are presenting is not the actual. And when it's using thoughts, the mind is superimposing thoughts onto the factual. And this is what is taking place all the world, all one's life. Can one see this? Can one be free of any hypocrisy? That's to say, can the mind sharpen itself without being trapped by thoughts and to see the fact? The fact must include psychological fact. That is the whole thought process on the mind. All the psychological activities of the mind. But now the whole world is worshipping the ego, the self. And this part has been wrapped up in that concept and become one's privacy, so to speak. And such a division brings about this individualistic world. And where each individual lives in self-deception, illusion. Propelled by its strong desires, purposes, satisfaction, and fulfillment. And such a state is full of attachment to various things. As we said earlier today, as long as the mind is into the content of thoughts, there must be attachment. Therefore, the egocentric thinking with its thoughts has expanded to everywhere. internalizing everything as part of me. That's why the ego has occupied the whole planet. With its possessiveness. Craving more, desire for more, seeking pleasure. Please see the actual situation of our life. When the things outside become part of me inside, which is the activity of the ego, I become easily irritated. If I internalize this plant as part of me, when this plant is attacked, I feel irritated because that's me. Then my car, my money, my position, my family, my house, my computer, my everything, which are the content of thoughts. When that part has become part of me, please see the fact of it. The mind becomes utterly irritating, can be easily irritated by anything. Therefore, I become isolated because those things are so important to me. I no longer care about humanity. I forget what is humanity. Because my money, my position, is most important. Your life has nothing to do with me. Whether you live or die has nothing to do with me. Because my money, my position, is the thing I really care about. And if you take my money away, maybe only 100 euros, I will fight with you. I will fight against it. Because you have irritated me. Please see this. It's being repeated all the time in the world. From the personal and small quarrel to the big war between nations, areas. The same pattern is repeated all the time. From the mental violence, as we just look at them, to the physical violence to kill people, kill animals, pollute everything. They are all being dominated by the same pattern. Everything human beings have touched upon immediately become the content of thoughts. Therefore, immediately become part of me, to possess, to occupy, to control. Can one see this fact without any ambiguity? That's to say, can one put aside all the thoughts now? Can one end the entanglement with all thoughts? That's to say, can one observe all the movement of thoughts now on the mind? That's to say, observe the total movement of thoughts without being an option. Option is out of thoughts, right? Option A, option B is the content of thoughts. When the mind observes all the movement of thoughts, the mind is out of all the content. Therefore, it's out of any option. Can we see the truth of it? The truth of this statement. Observe the total movement of thoughts. It's not an option. The option is the content of thoughts. If the observation is an option, it cannot observe the total movement of thoughts. Can one see the contradiction here? Therefore, observing completely what is going on the mind is never an option. And when the mind is able to do that, I hope everybody is doing it now, observing the total movement of thoughts, the mind is free from the deception of thoughts. When that observation is taking place without being an option, the mind is free of all hypocrisies. Hypocrisy only exists when the mind is not observing completely, when the mind is not in full attention, when the mind is trapped in the content of thoughts. Therefore, the mind is conditioned to thoughts, dependent on thoughts. Therefore, must be subjected to the cunningness and the deception of thoughts. But when the mind is actually observing all the movement of thoughts, without controlling or shaping them, just observing completely without an option, the mind will capture various cunningness and deception from thoughts. Therefore, the mind is free of all that. And when the mind is doing that, one will come upon what is authenticity, what is a truthful living. And the truthful living is not an option. Authenticity is never an option. Not say, I choose to be authentic. Absurd, isn't it? But when I choose, all the mischief and deception starts. When I say I choose to be something, I choose to be authentic, who is the entity that says choose? Is it me, the ego? The ego says, I will choose to be authentic. Well, the ego there denies authenticity. Therefore, the hypocrisy comes back. So can the mind do that? Can the mind observe the total movement of thoughts without being propelled by the content of thoughts, which is doing? Non-doing is observe. Without non-doing, without this complete observation, the mind must be trapped in various fragments created by thoughts. And therefore, thoughts drive various behaviors. And the whole world is based on that. And those behaviors are divisive, self-contradicted. Expressing the inner disorder outwardly. So those ill behaviors, these problematic behaviors, in reverse, affects humans' psyche. So the humanity, the whole world is trapped in that vicious circle. Ill thoughts, ill behaviors, and ill behaviors lead to more ill thoughts. The whole world becomes deteriorating as one can perceive directly. Seeing all this, what is one to do? Depending on others to change the society. Then one is still depending on thoughts, isn't it? Others will change society for me. It's an idea. And I depend on an idea. Therefore, I don't change. Please observe this. Thoughts has overflown into every corner of the living. Thoughts can immediately pop up, and the mind can immediately depend on it. Seeing all this, the speaker means seeing the fact of it, the truth of it, not immediately translating that into an idea. This is a very important topic. Let's go slowly on this. When a speaker makes a statement that points to something factual, can the mind immediately capture that actual without translating it into an idea? This part can occur very quickly, but that's the starting point of all self-deceptions. Can one perceive it directly, hearing the statement from the speaker, and sometimes observing the mind, observing the whole movement of thoughts on the mind without translating what one hears into an idea? As we said today quite a few times, what we are looking at together now, what we are investigating together now, is not an idea. It's not philosophy. We are not playing some mental games. The speaker has no intention to influence you whatsoever. He's not conveying you any ideas, but rather invite you to look at it, things as it is, to perceive the fact, the truth of it. Which means that we all need to give it full attention, observing all the movement thoughts without being trapped in any ideas. That's to say, can one put aside all the things one have learned or acquired and accumulated as knowledge? When the mind has the knowledge running and in the background, when the mind hears the statement, the mind immediately using the knowledge as a filter to interpret what one hears. Therefore, everything becomes an idea immediately. If this is always taking place, then there's no point, there's no meaning for us to look at things. Because thoughts are still preventing them to take place. Putting aside all the thoughts means putting aside all the knowledge one has accumulated. It's not to forget the knowledge, but just simply put aside, be aware. Don't let any knowledge as a filter to interpret what one hears. When one is interpreting, the mind is still into the content of thoughts, isn't it? In interpretation or analysis, it's all in that domain, still the content of thoughts. Can one listen to the statement made by the speaker without agreeing or disagreeing? Because agreeing or disagreeing is still similar to interpretation and analysis in the content of thoughts. But facts cannot be agreed or disagreed. Fact is fact. You can't say, oh, I agree with the fact, which is nonsense, isn't it? Facts are not arguable. So when the mind sees a fact without being influenced or manipulated by thoughts, there's no agreement or disagreement. There's no interpretation or analysis. So can the mind have that quality or return to that quality as we are discussing and looking at the things together? That's to say, a fresh mind. A fresh mind looks at everything as it is. Therefore, the freshness continues. Otherwise, the mind is clinging to the thoughts, to the knowledge, to everything it has accumulated and acquired, and seeing everything through those filters. It can never compound something new. Come and see the fact of it. Because thoughts are always old, aren't they? Thoughts are never new. When someone says, oh, it's a new thought, see the absurdity of it. Thoughts are old, always old. Seeing the fact, perceiving the psychological fact, which is also part of the fact, demands a fresh mind. Fresh means young, innocent. The mind is free of any trauma, hurt. It's able to heal. Freshness means there's no hatred, there's no resistance. Resistance and the hatred comes from the accumulation of thoughts, isn't it? When there's no when there's no mark on the mind made by thoughts, the mind can't have hatred, can't have resistance. Please see the fact of it. So can the mind be free of all marks? That's to say, can the mind live a life with full attention, observing all the movement of thoughts completely? When the mind is actually doing that, as we said, not an option, it's something absolutely necessary. When the mind sees it and expounds it, the intelligence of the neuron system functions fully, dissolving all the marks. Please be aware, this is not the speaker's idea. Please verify it in person. You must verify it. When the mind is observing completely, the intelligence of the neuron system functions fully, therefore dissolving all the hurt, all the trauma, all the marks. And the speaker is encouraging you to verify it. Otherwise, the talk here has no meaning. When the intelligence of neuron system is always functioning fully, the life is fresh. The fresh mind can see everything as it is. There's absolute clarity. And that freshness means innocency. Innocency. The mind is innocent. And in that innocency, there's a beauty. The beauty of a virtue. The beauty of freedom from all the trivials. And the traps created by the ego. The beauty of authentic kindness. And the beauty free from all hypocrisies. And also the beauty of being one. And living in this way, which is not an option, is the real rebellion to this world. Monstrous, violent, isolating, divisive. And the compassion can only come about when the mind is fresh. Compassion is not something I can cultivate. What I can cultivate is still the product of thoughts. And to have that compassion demands the mind to be free. And freshness, as we said, is or embodies that freedom. When one has hurt, when one has trauma, when one has various resistance or hatred, compassion is not possible. Because that hurt is still in the self-centered state. When the mind is concerned about that hurt, it cannot be concerned about humanity. That's for sure. Because that hurt is so dominating, that trauma or that hatred is so dominating. Compassion is not possible. Only when the mind is free of all that, there's a natural concern about all humanities. It's not that I just create an idea about being compassionate or loving. And anything that is cultivated is deceptive, therefore hypocritical. Love and compassion cannot be cultivated. That is something factual, can I say it? When the mind is cultivating something, what is the entity to cultivate? There must be a cultivator behind the action cultivate, isn't it? And what is that cultivator? The me, the ego, the self. So love and compassion is never in the field of thoughts. Can I say this, please? This is a very important topic. Only when the mind is free, the mind is capable of loving and being compassionate. As we said, thoughts creates the disorder. Thoughts breed disorder. And one's life is trapped in the disorder. And that disorder has been justified by the whole world. The various mental structures of the society is based on disorder. Please see the fact of it. We don't condemn anything. Condemnation has no meaning because it only triggers emotions and resistance. We don't do that. But one must see the facts deeply, see everything deeply. The mental constructor of the society is the thought product based on disorder. So we can simply say society is disorder. And can one live a life without any disorder? That's the real challenge for anyone who is really serious and earnest to do that. To live a life without any disorder. That's the real challenge of living. When the mind is dealing with that challenge, any other challenge won't be an issue. But without dealing with this fundamental challenge, any challenge is an issue. And so the mind is trapped in numerous so-called challenges, which are all secondary issues. Can one say this? Seeing all those demands tremendous humility. When the ego is resisting, it cannot see very deep. If one feels the difficulty now, can one deal with that? Because that's the ego resisting, escaping, avoiding. If one cannot deal with it, then everything will go back to the old way. So as we are discussing, investing now, we are all fighting, aren't we? Fighting against the ego. It looks invisible, but it's indeed incredibly visible as one really delve into this topic. And dealing with this fundamental challenge, that is to be free of any disorder. As we said, thoughts create disorder. And being free of any disorder, and the thoughts can still function in its right place. There's a natural harmony. That's to say, we can repeat this. The mind is free of all the disorders, and thoughts breed disorder. Without being free from all disorders, the mind can still use the thoughts in the right place. So that's a natural harmony. And that harmony is the art of living. Perhaps it is the highest form of art human beings can ever reach. Those paintings on the wall or doing all kinds of art, that's something very shallow. The art of living, that's to say freedom. Freedom from all the disorders created by thoughts, and still use thoughts in the right place. I think the first part today is enough. Then next we can have an open discussion for any questions. I think it's also very necessary for people to ask questions. Ask deeply, honestly, and we can look at together. It's not that you ask me. It basically has no meaning. Because I can tell you, I can't teach you anything. You can be only your own teacher, right? That's why so someone can ask questions, but we all look at this question together. What is more important is that you compound the answer for yourself, and the answer is in the question itself.
Okay, I can. There's a few questions come up during the talk for myself at least, and yeah, I'm still trying to navigate them. So I'll say what comes up, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
So I agree that facts are facts. There is nothing to change about facts. They are what they are. But then there's also then the biological necessities. Like we talked previously that, to not die, you need to avoid getting hit, you need to eat, you need to drink. And sometimes, for me, the biggest challenge in how to navigate life is that when the biological necessities and the facts are not in a harmony with each other. So you were talking that if somebody tries to take money from you, then you fight them. For me, that's just an extension of the biology trying to keep itself alive. And I'm not really sure where the boundary goes, between necessary biological actions and denying the reality that the self is way bigger than it should be. That's something I don't see the boundary very easily.
Joyce, what do you think about this question? I just passed the buck to you. Sorry. Just kidding. Yeah. Joyce, what is your response to that? We are all in a similar situation. It's not his personal question. It's not that. We're all in the same boat.
When everything is rooted in goodness, so
just maybe you can just use your microphone so people can hear you clearly. Maybe I can just.
I think when everything is rooted in goodness, there would be no choice and the action is clear. So if someone else is going to take out my money, for example, if that's for his or her greedy aggression, self-interest, and then I will counteract his improper behavior. But if that person is so has no money to buy food, is so hungry, is almost dying, he or she needs this money. So maybe I can give some money to him or her. It's just an example. I think in life, maybe case by case, is there a clear boundary between psychological needs and biological needs? Because people live in human society, people need money to buy necessities.
So, sir and madam, we need to first to look at this question. What is the biological necessity? So what do you think?
The easiest would be when there's an instinct, like let's say somebody throws something at me.
Yeah.
I don't even think,
Yeah.
It's automatic.
Yes.
That's easy.
Yes.
But then there's the more complex things, that when the thought comes into it, when somebody comes to attack me, I need to think, should I run away? Should I defend myself? Should I give them what they want? Then the thought are starting to come in, and then the choices come in, and then I'm lost.
Yes.
Yes.
So to answer the question, what is the biological necessity, before we come to your question later, we need to look at what does the mind, or what does the brain, or what does the whole neural system really need to perceive or to compound what the whole neural system, including the brain and mind, need, is the foundation of all the biological necessities, right? So what does the neural system need?
Nourishment.
Okay.
Physical safety. Rest.
Rest.
I guess that's
in general,
yes.
Right? So the whole neural system must have the physical security. What does it mean to be physically secure? Free from disturbance. Free from various physical stimulation, or being too hot, too cold. Right? That's not healthy to the whole neural system. Mm-hmm. So that's why we need a shelter. Make sure we can feel safe, warm, without being affected by the bad weather. And we also need to have clothes to keep the body warm. We also have food, because as animals, as a life, food are needed to make sure we have the necessary nutrition, so the whole neural system can function normally. Without clothes, shelter, and food, our neural system cannot function normally. Therefore, we can't sit here with everybody across the world to discuss deeply. So that's something we must have. And then from that, we began to perceive or have the intuition what is biological necessity. And then we come back to our real life. I mean, not real life, this external life in various forms. People in different societies, in US, in UK, in other countries, also in the Netherlands here. The society exists in different forms. And we are living in societies. And we are living, and we have to live in societies, because society can provide something to guarantee the physical security, physical necessity. But society is not something external, because we are the society, aren't we? Because society is made up of human beings. We are just part of them. Actually, we are the society.
And even say it's made up of thoughts.
That's it. There must be thoughts to function there, to let society running, right? And we are also living in society. So we must use some thoughts to guarantee the physical necessity. But as we said earlier today, the thoughts are very dangerous, are very deceptive. And the confusion and all the issues come from thoughts. And how the thoughts can function in the right place to guarantee the physical necessity or the biological necessity. At the same time, without creating mischief, confusion. Is that what we really concerned about, right? And then, when thoughts come into play, can the mind be aware of all the movement of thoughts? Being aware of all the biological and physical need. And in the society, money unfortunately becomes the center. Everything depends on money. And one's physical survival, security also depends on money. But we must see that money is a thought product. And the money-centered mind or money-centered thinking becomes incredibly destructive. The money thinking is cunning, deceptive, covering up the desire, avarice, greed. At the same time, the life is dependent on money for the physical survival. At the same time, the various desires, fulfillment, pleasure can also be achieved by money. So actually, the boundary between the physical need and not is very clear. But because the money, because the thoughts, everything becomes ambiguous. That's the source of all life confusions. When one is really serious about this, right? So can the mind observe completely? Just to come back to the example Joyce mentioned. When somebody comes here for money, the mind must observe what is going on. For example, I do have some money, only, but like a few thousand euros as a deposit, because I know that money needed for safety reasons. But when somebody come here, he want to have that money. So I must put aside all the thoughts to perceive what is going on. Does that person really need money? Or he wants that money for other purposes? For his egocentric purpose, desire, fulfillment? And do I really need this money? I must also be aware of that. If I give away all this money to another person, what's the consequence of it? The mind must observe it, see it. And seeing that, there's no confusion about this. Which means that the mind must be always observing all the time when the thought is being employed, to see the facts, to see the psychological facts. Not only my psychological facts, but also the other person's. And the intelligence of the neural system is able to do that. To read the lines, to see the actual behind all those verbal interactions between people. That's to say, one must be free of being impersonal. One must be free of being personal. Because now people come here for money in different ways. They all pretend to be personal. And when one is being personal, it's easy to trigger other people's state of being personal. But being personal is something deceptive. And being personal can be only to a person who you really trust. But now, being personal becomes something so cheap. Can we see the trap here in the society? Everyone pretends to be personal. But that's something deceptive. Because a personal state can only be shown to a person who you really trust. Otherwise, being personal will be manipulated. So see all kinds of business of doing things based on this personal state, with all the deceptions, nonsenses. There's that, when I perceive it, there's this natural ugliness behind it, too ugly, hypocritical. So can one not be trapped in that personal state when the whole world is being personal in various cunning ways? And when the mind is in that personal state, the mind is confused. The mind cannot see the actual situation. As we said, being personal is something very cautious. It can be only shown to the person or to someone you really trust. And still, in that state, you must be very cautious still. Because being personal, even to the one you really trust, it still causes issues. So can one live a life not being personal? When one live a life without being personal, stay in the right place, please see the fact of it. Otherwise, being personal becomes something very cheap. Behind it, that's deception. There's various desires, cunningness. And this whole world becomes more and more personal, therefore hypocritical and deceptive. So, does this make some sense to you?
Yes, yeah. I can maybe try to repeat it a bit and see if it makes sense.
Yeah.
So as I understand, is that in whatever situation, I can either think of it from me versus the world, and then it's just choices, thoughts, mental processes trying to work. But there is also just the pure observation of things as they are, and then the action is just going to be the action.
That's it.
Yes.
So that's it. Simple, isn't it? Simple, clear,
Yes.
no confusion. And of course, there's no regret on that. Otherwise, there's a choice, there's action, there's a regret all the time pattern. That's it.
Fact. What is a fact? Fact. Things happened in a moment, in a time, in a space, in a time and space in the past. But when that moment passed, it's past. So, what things, the facts, the so-called fact, also has passed.
Yeah.
It's gone.
Yeah.
So, could people know the real fact? Or people can only describe what had happened with words as truthful as possible.
As Joyce mentioned, facts also had a past. Something happened at that time in the past. And now, how can I recall it? Because now, when the mind recalls it, it's still thought processes. And if it is fact, and when the mind sees the fact, that recalling still bring back the thoughts, but it won't stay. It will just go away. But when the mind has issues, has disorder, which is the ego, when the mind is recalling that past, the egocentric interpretation functions immediately. It makes stories or misinterpretations or speculations based on the recorded content. And therefore, that story becomes stagnant, becomes something, so important, the mind clings to it. That's not a fact. Joyce, does this make sense to you? So when the mind simply recalls what happened in the past, when there's no me, no ego, there's no interpretation, it's simply like this. It just comes and goes.
So sometimes the so-called facts are very, very complicated. Like something happened in the history, many parties were involved.
Wow.
It's like some political incidents in history in one country. Many parties, many people involved. Maybe no one knew what is true at that time.
The complexity comes from the thoughts, because we tend to divide. Oh, this is you, this is him, this is her. The different images of people. And when the thoughts is using in that way, it becomes a combination of multiple points. One person is a point, and then everything becomes complicated. But when there's only observation of the thoughts, the self-centered, the egocentric state, it just simply clears all these complexities. When everybody function as a point, oh, my thought, your thought, her, his thought, you see, that narrative is divisive. Because as more persons, as points are added to that narrative, it becomes utterly twisted, complicated. But all those are covering up the truth. Now, another thing that is usually taking place in the individual society is that people are collectively sharing the benefit. But when they take responsibility, everybody do it individualistically. That's the cunning thing. Also similar to the conflict situation. When they get the money or the benefits, they don't together, share it. But when they do their job, everybody only take their own responsibility, which is not responsible at all. When you really deal with people, you find that they just pass the buck to each other. And when it's just kick around in that environment. Similar to that situation. Facts actually are very simple. What is complicated is the thoughts, the self-centered thinking, your thinking, my thinking, his thinking. You see, when the things are presented in that way, there's no clarity. So to really recover the fact is to clear all those deceptive complexities created by the thoughts.
So truth is one to perceive directly.
Yes.
So although everyone can offer some narratives about that fact from personal view, interpretation. So ultimately, it depends one to perceive the truth, what actually happened at that moment.
Yes.
According to one's understanding of human mind,
also,
how mind works.
Yes.
Based on that understanding.
That's clear and unambiguous understanding of it. Just like we three people here, your thinking, my thinking, and then this discussion is endlessly. But when we all three perceive directly, we dissolve that complexity immediately. And then we all see the fact immediately. But we keep talking, discussing as my view, your view, his view, endlessly.
That requires the mind has a quality, but that quality is rare currently in this world.
Yes, madam. That's it.
This discussion makes me think there's a Buddhist story that feels relevant for me, about three blind people and an elephant. You know this story?
Yes.
Yeah, so like the three blind people feel an elephant, and one feels the leg and says, "Oh, it's a tree." Another feels the ear and says, "Oh, it's a sail," and the third feels the trunk and says, "It's a snake." So the reason I thought about this is because all of them are trying to perceive reality as directly as they can, and then explain what they experience, and they all have a different angle at reality. Maybe that's also something that's we can perceive reality with as little thoughts between us and reality as possible, but still we are not omnipresent. We can't see everything, so also that needs to be taken into account that what you perceive is a slice of reality, maybe. It's never the full reality.
But can one perceive the total reality? So when we are using thoughts, everybody will in their own angle. But can we all go beyond that, perceive the total one immediately?
Together?
Together. Together also means alone.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. when we are all alone, we are all together.
Yes.
Can we perceive that totality immediately?
So see, all the movement of thoughts is like to touch the whole elephant, right?
Yeah.
Takes time to observe and perceive.
Yeah.
Don't haste to conclusion.
Yes. So like somebody else said, "Oh, it is like a snake." Someone said, "Oh, it's like a tree." And when the mind hears all this, we don't immediately cling to a conclusion. The whole neural system will function to perceive totally. So when all three people doing that, everybody will perceive the same thing. Otherwise, this fragmented thinking continues endlessly.
So the problem in this story is that one person says, "You're wrong, it's a tree." No, you're wrong.
That's the problem. It's endless. And everybody begin to defend their view. The trap continues forever.
Yeah. Related to this question of Joyce, I also had a question that I was planning to ask. I think I even asked it before, but it's always on my mind. That even if we try to be totally removing as much layers of thoughts and ideas between us and reality, still when you're talking to other people, it's always through the very rough tool of language, which when I say a word, it comes out from my own history and my own understanding of it. It enters your mind with your own history and understanding of it. And I can never be fully sure that when you say something and I understand it, it's a copy of what you were thinking, if it's a fact of your mind, of your expression, or my story on top of it. So part of the reason I like to come here and listen to you speak is for me to try to increase the exposure to make sure that what I'm understanding is actually what it is. But it's never to a degree that I can be confident. I don't know if that makes sense.
So if the speaker understands your question correctly, is that in our daily conversation with different people, our thoughts are used to point to various concrete images. And that's something very difficult to precisely copy from one person to another person. There's always some kind of miscommunication. So there's always something you can't simply let that person see the same image with you. So that's a fact. Can one stop seeking it? So I want to make sure he or she can understand me completely. That's an illusion. But here, when we are really investigating the mind, we are no longer using language to point to something concrete. And in this conversation between you and me, for example, what is needed and what demand from both sides is to give full attention, observe, perceive the mind directly. And then we use words to point to that. And then in this conversation, so if the verse causes misunderstandings, we just ask each other to clarify it and make sure that the verse we use to point to the same thing, not the concrete thing. As we said, the concrete thing cannot be seen all the time. It's less a fact. But for the things that is about the activities of the mind, we may use different expressions, different verse, but it always points to the same thing. Because we now really use the language as a tool to point to something. But in our daily conversation, we don't go beyond it. Because most people, when using thoughts or you use language to point to the thoughts, and the content of thoughts is important, but it cannot be copied precisely. And in that level, or in that dimension, there's always this level of being unable to communicate completely. So there's always a sense of oscillation, no matter how subtle it is. Please see the fact of it. If one in that dimension want to achieve communication, it is an illusion. It only incur great sufferings to oneself. But if we can all go beyond it, observe the mind together, see the truth of it, we can see the same thing together. Though the expressions can be very different, it doesn't matter, but still the same, not similar. So it's the same. And can this communication, specifically doesn't say that between you and me, but the communication with yourself can always take place in your life. And when that communication always can take place, the mind go beyond the daily things. Therefore, there's no oscillation. And in that real communication with oneself, there's a clarity. There's no uncertainty. And more importantly, the mind knows what is freedom. And it is up to everybody to go beyond it, the daily trivials, the daily superficialities. Being trapped in it, as most people are, see the consequence in the lifelong isolation, loneliness, and all that. And as we said, the whole society is based on these superficialities, disorders, various and endless details, and thoughts, as the concrete, keeps dividing. So people are isolated, separated. It is up to everybody to go beyond all those, to really see the fact of the living, the fact of the sake. There's no ambiguity. We all see the same thing. And that's the real communication. Also the real connection as human beings, connected. And with clarity and compassion. Full period.
So in the observation, so what's the function of a mirror? So I think one can observe oneself and get some insights. What's the function of the communication with another one?
So what is the mirror? What's the meaning of observing oneself? Obviously, one cannot observe oneself in isolation. It is only possible to observe oneself through relationship. So the relationship is the mirror, isn't it? One is related to everything, to one's friend, family, or any person, or anything. When one is observing what one behaves, what one says, what one thinks in that relationship. And that relationship functions as a mirror to give the feedback. And one must be put aside the ego in a humble state to receive, to see the actual state. If one has no relationship, related to nothing, living in isolation, how can one observe? Relationship here, the speaker means the relationship is not only about person to person, but also to one person to everything, one person to the thoughts, to all the ideas, to all the human dynamics. And the mind perceives without this me, the center. Therefore, it says what is, without any resistance or modification. When I see the anger, same in myself, for example, I see it as is. I don't give any excuse for it. In that observation, the mind will find out what really happens, why the mind becomes angry and violent. And seeing the actual cause, which is the functioning of the neuron level intelligence, everything is dissolved, and nothing won't be repeated. That all those demands tremendous humility. Does this answer your question?
There are questions from people online, or is it something we need to pay attention to? Are people online also asking questions? Is that something to pay attention to? Or?
No questions. Maybe Cico, you can remind people on in September. If people on in September have some questions, could leave a message in the comment.
All those demands of mind must be very quiet. when the mind is busy, the mind can't really observe all those. The basic state of mind is merely the rhythm from the content of the thoughts of one piece content by another. Therefore, the mind is hectic, restless. Especially when one is trapped in the society with all the business going on. The mind has no space. It is absolutely necessary for one to deal with this. Otherwise, without space, observation is not possible. It's only ignorance with all the issues without understanding why. But when the mind is quiet, observing totally, it doesn't ask why, because that's the fact. Everything is so self-evident.
So, someone asks a question in September. The question is, if we can only see things in relationships, are we able to have this relationship with ourselves?
Of course, when one sees everything in relationships, there must be a relationship to oneself. As we said, it's not only about the relationship between people, but also the relationship between everything. The mind with the thoughts, the mind with all the things around one, and all the internal processes. So one must have a relationship with oneself.
So what is relationship? So relationship is a relationship the interaction of neuron cells between different brains. Is that relationship?
And that must be in your awareness. Otherwise, it has no relationship. What relationship means? Relate, being related. What is related?
So if you are not aware of it, there is no relationship.
Of course not.
I was actually interested in the self. A relationship with oneself. What is that self?
Yes, what is that self?
Yes, that's a good question.
Is the self the thought production? Thought products, or the self means the whole organism?
Yeah.
The body.
That's the problem. So one must answer for oneself. What's that self? If the self is the whole organism, then the mind observes all the mental processes within the mind. In that observation, there's a relationship, right? But when the self is the me, the ego, and when we want to start a relationship with the ego, what is that? Nothing.
The friend on September said, yes, it must be in our awareness in order to relate to it.
Of course.
Makes sense.
Perfect. So being related must be in the awareness. See it.
So what happens if I'm aware of the relationship with the other, but the other is in his or her own isolation? He or she doesn't think she or she is not aware of the relationship with me.
You see that you are related to her or him because you see the fact. There's always these neuron level interactions. And indeed, it is related. But for him or her, who is living in its own isolation, the egocentric thinking, he thinks he has no relationship with you. He's not aware that he is related with you? Is that a question, right? So you perceive the relationship, you perceive that you are related to him or her because that's a fact. You are aware of that, the fact. Therefore, you have a relationship with him or her. But for him or her, who is living in isolation, in its own self-centered view, self-centered world, and he thinks, that's my life. I have nothing to do with you. But the fact that there's a relationship, there's this neural level contact all the time. But he is not aware of that. Can you see this as it is? When you see it as it is, what is your question?
Or he or she is aware of this, but would not like to admit that. Thought denies the relationship, denies to see the fact.
No, so he clings to the thoughts that he has no relationship with you. Therefore, he's not aware. When he's really aware, I mean, aware in a deeper sense, as we said in the whole sessions, the mind can't cling to the thoughts that, with that false claim, right? Then he will say, oh, I also have a relationship with you. So that's why he's in isolation. The mind clings to the thoughts that I have no relationship with you. And the mind, therefore, is not aware. So can you perceive this all the time? When you perceive this, what is the question? Right, the question is clear. I feel that because it's a fact that I'm related to you, but you living in an isolation, for example, and the mind came to that thoughts, saying that you have no relationship with me. I see the force of it. Therefore, what one says in that way won't hurt me. Because in fact, you are also related to me. Because the neurons are always interacts.
No more questions?
Mm-hmm.
It's almost 2 hours.
Yes.
Shall we end the online session or?
What time is it now?
10 to 4. Or is there any questions on Inside Timer? You can leave a message in the comment.
Can maybe continue quickly the conversation that you just finished.
But we still have 10 minutes for online, so we don't just take time, don't worry.
So when you are in a connection with somebody else and they have their own world and their own fragment they're in, that's not something that I can control.
No.
You know? So it is what it is. And it's not really my problem also, in a way. You know, so it doesn't have to be like a true mutual from my perspective. I connect to you not through thoughts and not through images, but as directly as I can.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't come from the other side, then it doesn't come from the other side because it just doesn't, you know. Yeah. It doesn't have to be equal, the same type of the connection from both directions.
Mm.
But when there's a discussion from the other side, here the mind can still feel some discomfort. That's it. But I don't want to develop more thoughts based on this. I just feel that's the problem. When people in isolation, the neural level has some kind of discomfort. But I don't want to develop more thoughts based on this. And then there will be emotions, resistance, and all that, which is unnecessary. But I'll stay with this state. And that's the action naturally taking place.
And let go of the expectations.
Of course.
To have this mutual interaction.
Yeah. So in that observation, there's a natural action. Because the fact If I expect something from their side, it's an illusion which only incurs more issues to me. Sometimes I also see the suffering of the other side, suffering from this isolation, disconnection. Sometimes the mind acts not to be hurt from that disconnection.
The friend said that consider the relationship with the severely mentally disabled. Consider the relationship with the severely mentally disabled. We are still one with very different internal realities.
Please observe completely. Don't, if you use example here, it can be very tricky. So for some people who are mentally disabled, or the mind is functioning totally differently, please see the fact of it. When the mind sees the fact, the mind is free of all this. But if one still want to connect with that person, which is not a connection, but a thought process with his desire to connect, then it will get issues. So there, of course, on this planet, there are many people who are severely mentally disabled, or see the fact of it, and stand alone. So that's to say, one must observe one's own all mental and thought processes. The desire to connect, which is not possible. And seeing that person as is, without from any self-centered view. Can one see a person as is without any images about one? When one says, okay, that's the one's mental state, there's no confusion. So what is important is that one must be alive to oneself, have this real relationship with the organism. That's to say, the mind must be free of all the self-centered view, self-centered thinking, and the ego. With that real connection with the whole body neuron system, when the ego is not there, one represents the humanity. One is never disconnected. Therefore, one can connect with anybody naturally.
Okay. The friend said, no expectations, no confusion.
Of course.
Thank you.
See it for yourself. Good.
And maybe say severe mental disablement is also a bit of a label in a sense.
Of course, yes.
Every mind is different.
Yes.
Yes, and you can only observe what certain minds are, and doesn't necessarily have to be a judgment in it.
No.
It's just
I think the real change is that we as human beings can easily take on that personal view. And then we see everybody personally. That's the issue, isn't it? When we see everybody personally, we can't see the other person actually. When we see the person actually, one's mental state, or one's mental challenges or problems or severe mental issues, see that person as it is, not see that person personally. When the mind sees that person personally, the mind is confused. Because that being personal is something very deceptive. But when they see the person as it is, there's only clarity. There's no explanation. That's only what it is. So can one live life without being personal? So the personal can stay in the right place. But when the life is always personal, say the traffic.
Okay. Shall we end the... Is it the time to end the online session? Or
Yes, let's do it. And so let's finish today's session online with people from all the world. And it's great that we can spend a few hours together, putting aside all the things to delve into the sake. Hopefully everybody can get something out of it while one's daily diligent observation and care. So really take care, and hopefully we can see you in the future sessions. Bye, everybody.